So,
Ready.
so this is In Quest of Truth, um, top of page 156. Uh,
My phone.
I wrote to Baba. I'm at the end of this paragraph here that we did last time. I wrote to Baba asking if it was now a part of the progress for me to see ghosts. The reply came back to put the master's photo under my pillow. This I did and was no more troubled. Just repeating that because it sounds like good advice if people are seeing ghosts. Now, to describe Baba's headquarters at Mirzad in Pimplegaon, I feel this is the place to mention that one of the outstanding characteristics of Mir Baba's life is his simplicity in all things. Amongst other traits is his devotion to animals and his inimitable sense of humor. Baba leads a life somewhat similar to that of Jesus. Certainly, to be with the Master is, on occasion, to find oneself back in gospel days. How does she know that? I mean, how did Jesus live? We don't know. Anyway, I often wish some of the Master's detractors could see the life he and his men lead, the self sacrifice, the self abnegation, and the austerity. He usually has one meal a day of rice and dal. Every frugality is practiced with no luxuries of any kind, and many a time the Mandali have not enough to eat, and their clothes cannot be renewed. They have just to be patched and made to last till quite worn out. If only the critics knew how Baba and his men live, would not they be overcome with shame for spreading misleading statements without a shadow of foundation? How many Westerners could lead such a life? But it has ever been the same. History always repeats itself. Did not Jesus suffer at the hands of the Pharisees? Did not they seek to kill Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, Rama, and Zoroaster? All had their enemies. It has always been so. It will always be so. Baba's headquarters are small and unpretentious, as primitive and simple as could be imagined in these days of material comfort. No electricity, no fans, no amenities of any kind. For Westerners, the climate is none too suitable, being hot and uncomfortable, except in the winter months. And there is often a shortage of water. I feel that a word of appreciation is due to Baba's intimate group. The men Mandali in general have but one meal a day, also of rice and dal. They work from dawn to dusk, and some of them continue again from dusk to midnight. They all clean their own rooms and do their own washing, and sometimes sleep on the floor. Their quarters are indeed most primitive, judging from my standard of comfort. The women Mandali too have their own duties, which are not light, and all must be prepared to move at any time, traveling under conditions of hardship and uncertainty. For Baba changes his place of residence from time to time, and therefore he and his close group seldom stay in one spot for a long period. When devotees sigh and envy the members of that close group and wish they could take their place, it should be understood that very few could live such a disciplined life. It is not a case of sitting at the master's feet, imbibing knowledge. It is only unceasing work. When I stay there and gaze in wonder at all they have to do, I ask myself, could I stand up to it? The answer is, I do not think I could indefinitely. If we want an example to follow, we cannot do better than to note that these men and women are entirely lacking in any form of self-esteem. Their main characteristic is one of humility. Neither are they lotus-eating dreamers. Marianne, could you unmute and continue, please?
Yes, yes. For Westerners far away from Baba's counteracting influence, in our relationships with others, we may ambitiously play up to them, exposing not our real self, but what we want them to think we are. Just because we happen to have the luck to be able to do some special work for Baba, that is no excuse to flatter ourselves, to adopt an arrogant and overbearing attitude. There is no doubt that Baba does, at times, stir up latent weaknesses, and followers may behave badly in the most unexpected ways. But it is the way of salvation for faults to appear so that they may be dealt with. And Baba sometimes gives us enough rope to hang ourselves. In most societies and groups of no matter what persuasion, megalomaniacal tendencies may appear amongst egoistical individuals with a passion for dominating others. Baba has made it very clear that he does not like bossing, as he calls it. And certainly there is no bossing amongst his intimates. So the attempt to dominate others in Baba's name and to go so far even as to expect devotees to obey us is a sin of the first magnitude. The reason why I stress on tendencies to dominate others is because I was dominated in the name of Baba, so I know what it means. Also, I received a letter from a devotee who, in mentioning a certain person, stated, quote, as Baba's representative, he has to be obeyed, close quote. Also, devotees have even asked me if they had to obey him. There is only one person whom we must obey, and that is Baba. Then again, I had another letter in which the writer claimed that she and another were to attain to the sixth plane when Baba breaks his silence. This may or may not be so, but I do know from personal experience that Baba will at times put the carrot before the donkey. But I think best to quote Ruskin's words, quote, man's concentration on himself is unhealthy, whether his heavenly interests or his worldly interests matters not, close quote. In India, Baba's intimates certainly do not concentrate on themselves and are not interested in their spiritual status, whatever that might be. In fact, from what I know, they could not care less about ideas on spiritual self-advancement. There is no spiritual snobbery. All those who love Baba represent him. And as people will judge Baba by his followers, the best we can do is to try, no matter how difficult it may be, to model ourselves along the lines of Baba's famous Rajamundry address, 1954, which was quoted at length in my previous book. Baba exhorted his devotees as follows. Quote, I feel that you have not clearly understood how my work should be approached. It is natural that amongst workers of any cause, be it political, social, or spiritual, there are bound to be differences of opinion and feelings of competition and jealousy leading to the breakdown of the very basis of the work. Close quote. Baba went on to say that it was the life that his devotees led. Starting over. Baba went on to say that it was the life that his devotees lead that counts. Let them show that they are centers for Baba through their love for him. Let them forget their differences with one another and bear in mind that it is not necessary to have centers or offices. In Baba's work, special, separate organizations do not help, as members are always liable to be caught up in the limitations of such. With Baba, there is no need for, quote, representatives, for directors or subordinates, no need for officiousness and group forming. And it is wrong to try to identify Baba with any particular sect. All can share in his work, high or low, few or many, only by trying, no matter how hard it may be, to lead a life of selfless detachment, humility, and love, such as described by Baba. Then only might we be able to help a little, and only a little, in the cause to lift man's consciousness to a higher level. This is very, very difficult, but we can at least try and feel like Browning, quote, what I aspire to be and was not comforts, close quote.
Could you unpack that for us, Marion, please?
Say that again.
Could you unpack Browning's
This.
meaning? I don't get it.
What I aspired to be and was not comforts. I think that's it. I aspired to be something and was not that. I'm not sure. It's very different. I think it's still having the aspiration and not giving up the aspiration, even if you don't attain it. It's comforting to know that that's one's destiny.
I like that. Go. Yeah. Please continue reading.
I always hope that someday one of Baba's Mandali will write a detailed account of one of the oddest periods in the master's career, the new life, some 10 years back. How he left Meherabad one stormy, wet morning with a few of his close Mandali on a most extraordinary adventure on foot through India. All had to walk with pack animals carrying their scanty belongings. The women did have a small caravan to sleep in at night, but the men and Baba, who was, of course, incognito, slept in disused barns or stables. Rarely did they have a proper shelter, and often only trees to sleep under, with little protection from biting wind and heavy dew. Since none was allowed to carry money, the men had to beg their way for food. As most of them looked undeniably respectable, they would sometimes be turned away with jibes, and naturally it was impossible to explain the purpose of this odd pilgrimage. However, the generosity of the villagers was really amazing, They gave the pilgrims coarse native bread, lentils, and spiced vegetables, which were most thankfully received, since our pilgrims often went very hungry. The story of the few the Master chose to take with him on this eventful journey of almost incredible hardships has only been very briefly described in 2 brochures. Shall I read the asterisk or continue?
I think it just attributes the names
Oh.
of the brochures.
Oh, all right, all right.
But yeah, it's worth a read.
I'll quickly read it. It refers to the new phase of Meher Baba's life and Meher Baba in the Great Seclusion, published by Adi K. Irani, Ahmednagar, 1950.
Doesn't say who wrote it, but okay.
Needless to say, Baba has never explained the object of that journey. Was it some Franciscan drama reenacted from a bygone life? In the simple days when St. Francis lived, he and his friars would beg their way for sustenance and shelter, and they went through shocking privations, sometimes being brutally beaten when spurned from the door. St. Francis once, so we read, when commenting on their trials, said to his beloved disciple, quote, "Finally, hear the conclusion, Brother Leo, above all the graces and gifts of the Holy Spirit, which Christ hath given to his friends, is that of conquering oneself and suffering for the love of Christ, all pain, ill usage, opprobrium, and calamity. Because of all other gifts of God, we can glory in none, seeing they are not ours, but God's. But in the cross of tribulation and affliction, we may glory, for these are ours." Close quote. Should be mentioned that Baba has not had a large, it should be mentioned that Baba has not had a large ashram for many years. So there is no proper accommodation for visitors who wish to see him. Then again, the Master is constantly traveling or in seclusion. But although he does not satisfy idle curiosity, all genuine seekers may meet him. Fairly recently, I heard of a young Englishman who came across Meher Baba's discourses in London. He was so impressed that he took the first ship to Bombay without knowing even where Baba was. He, however, made inquiries on arrival and ascertained that Baba was in seclusion at Satara. Baba kept him one day and sent him back to England. At Meherazad, there are a few women and servants to look after the household, and some men mandali who attend to the innumerable duties connected with Baba's work. No questions are asked as to what the meaning of the Master's orders may be, and those nearest to him know no more of his hidden designs than those farthest away. All they know is that he works on many planes of consciousness at one and the same time. In fact, Baba may be doing a dozen things at once. And although one may think that one is holding his attention, one is really getting only a very small part of it. The truth is that he is working constantly and universally for the good of humanity. Meherazad would look from the air like a small green oasis in a desert because of its clumps of trees. But at the time of that particular visit, there were no flowers or vegetables in the garden, for no water from the well could be spared, owing to the drought. Except at monsoon time, the shortage of water is always particularly acute in this district, but the trees, shrubs, and plants in pots were refreshing to eyes tired of the parched landscape. In the evenings, a transformation takes place with the closing of the day. The varying colors, lights and shades of the sky take on an ethereal beauty, bringing a strange and wonderful atmosphere. One feels that one is on hallowed ground of great spiritual import, which posterity will one day recognize. For no matter where the master goes, that place becomes impregnated with his divine presence. All that those around Baba know that he is tirelessly, continuously working. Sometimes he will be sitting quietly, engaged in conversation. When he will rise and start marching up and down the veranda, his hands moving mysteriously. This means that the master is doing his universal work. And although he is undoubtedly working all day long, for we cannot but be aware of this strange remoteness and preoccupation, which does not concern us. There are times when he may be working more intensely than usual. It is well known to Meher Baba's followers that after a period of intense working, away in an empty house or a place where he is in deep seclusion, sometimes startling world events will follow his coming out again and resuming his ordinary activities. This suggests to the master's intimates that a crisis or tension of some sort in world affairs has been tempered by the hierarchy with whom, undoubtedly, the master is unceasingly in contact. Those who have been associated with other perfect masters, such as Babajan and Upasni Maharaj, have told me that all these masters made curious movements with their hands and were obviously preoccupied with the unseen world around them. The same applies to the technique of the saints. Thus, there is nothing unusual about Meher Baba's mysterious ways.
Thanks, Marian. Gloria, could you unmute and continue?
I have asked, but have obtained no reply, whether the master's work is more intense at night, which may well be the case. He retires early at about 6 o'clock as a rule, and there must always be a man who keeps awake in his room till another comes at about midnight or at a predetermined time. In fact, for reasons best known to himself, Baba is never alone at any time, except when in strict seclusion, when guards are posted outside. It seems that he rests little and is, if we may presume from his gestures and preoccupation, engaged as usual with his universal work. It is difficult for us, ordinary mortals, to have the faintest conception of what the master does, but none of us doubts that he keeps a ceaseless vigil, that he rarely relaxes, if ever. Indeed, it is well known that the masters never sleep in the sense what we do. Sometimes there is grim expression on his face, as if he is executing justice or giving orders in unseen spheres. I cannot be so presumptuous as to attempt further explanations, for I am as ignorant as those who are always with him. Also, we are not encouraged to speculate, for of what use is for our limited mortal minds to attempt to fathom the unlimited mind of the God-man? Of what use would it be for the master to explain the smallest detail, for we would not understand? Baba's retreat this time was looking just the same as the preceding year, when I went to see him a few days before he came out of his Manona's seclusion, ending his new life phase and starting the dawn of fresh activities. That year, 1953, Baba was celebrating his birthday privately and was taking a much needed rest before going south on further strenuous darshan tours. So there were no visitors, only the regular inhabitants of the place. It is both natural for devotees to express their love for the Master in the form of gifts to him and to those living with him. Baba accepts these offerings with love, for they are given in love. This, however, is to please the devotees rather than himself, for often these presents are of a luxury that is out of tune with the simplicity that is the keynote of daily living for himself and his close group. I feel strongly, and the men and women mandally agree with me, that the best and most useful gift is a donation, however small, which the master can use for his work with the poor and the masks, prominent aspect of his work to the years, as also for the daily expenses of the ashram and the individuals and families dependent of him. Fortunes have been put at the feet of the masters and refused. Baba desires the treasures of the heart, not the treasures of possessions. For we give little if we only our wealth. The treasure of the heart means the eventual annihilation of the ego. And how many of us are willing to part with our egos? As Meher Baba was born at 5 o'clock in the morning, in India, his birthday is celebrated at that hour. So we all got up extra early. The women mandali were looking lovely in beautiful but simple saris. After we had garlanded the master, we all stood to attention on the porch, while the men mandali, exactly at the hour, called out from over the compound wall the name of God in 7 different languages. Later in the morning, Baba took me round the men's quarters as he was doing to wash the feet of Mars, gathered together from neighborhood villages. Those untouchables lead a miserable, semi-starved existence, and it is an important part of Baba's work to raise their status and break down caste distinctions. There are, so I understand, some 50 or more millions of these people. And Baba tells me that no amount of legislation will make much difference. It is the people of India who must change their age-old habitual attitude towards them.
See what that asterisk
Asterisk.
says.
The Times of India, September 10, 1956, Nasik, September 8, quote, 10,000 sadhus gathered here for the Sinhasta fair refused to accept a gift from the Harijan merchant of Bombay. It was 20,000 rupees for a feast. The sadhus spurned the offer because the donor was an untouchable. Quote end.
Disgraceful.
I stood by Baba since I wanted to study the Maharaj or Jari Jans. That is to say, the reactions. Their faces somehow remind me of weather beaten birds, as if they had suffered so much that emotions were exhausted. The first to come forward was a feeble little old man. He had to be helped onto the stone seat round the large tree where Baba's ministration were to take place. He was pitifully aware of the inadequacy of his attire and gave several little tugs at his old skirt in the vain attempt to lengthen it. I felt I wanted to pat him on the back and tell him that God loved him more than he did those who despised him. I think Baba felt the same way, for he gave the poor old man a reassuring pat on the chin. The women came after men, as in the Indian custom, for comparatively women have an inferior status in India. I noticed that some of them were quite overcome with emotion. I wondered how much they could understand of the spiritual significance of Baba's work. It was the most poignant occasion for me. In Pimpal gone, there was now the unexpected opportunity to ask questions, for Baba was quite alone without any visitors. Quote, Baba, how old is Adam? End quote. Baba smiled. Quote, if I answered that the first man came on this earth 84 million years ago, what would that mean to you? End quote. For my part, I have never been able to understand why man should not be immeasurably old. Quite apart from the ice ages, there is always a constantly changing pattern of the Earth's crust due to cosmic upheavals, which surely could effectively blot out traces of thousands of past civilizations. They may all be at the bottom of the sea. Even now, scientists constantly put the age of the Earth back. To return to Baba's statement, he continued, quote, but if the whole explanation makes you understand how the first man evolved and how this first evolved man has been repeatedly millions of times appearing not only on this earth but on millions of earths, and so is ageless, timeless. But this has all to be explained properly. The book, which I have personally written when I had just stopped speaking and which I wrote in 1 year, in which now lies in the bank, to be touched only when I order, explains this point clearly. It's important for,
Oh,
let me finish the paragraph and then I return, it's okay?
mhm.
It's important for the world and the scientists to know, and therefore I have explained it about cycles, about the position of the Earth for realization, about the Earth dying, and the simultaneous evolution of another Earth, parent, not any other planet, parent close. When the first human being was evolved, when was the first realized being, whether egg came first or chicken, all has been written in detail in 1926 in that book, end quote. And this is the asterisk. Please note that Baba does not make a statement, he merely asks a question. Now we see that the latest discovery regarding the age of man is to be found in the skeleton Oreopithecus discovered in Tuscany, which seems to prove that man or somebody like him existed 10 million years ago. And in this find, there is no connection between the ape and man, hence no missing link. Now, perhaps science will get away from the former idea that man is quite a newcomer to our planet, in which case he will assume the dignified status that goes with ancient lineage and long cultural history, so revolutionizing previous anthropological theories. But then again, it must be pointed out that this latest find, which may only be the latest as I write now, does not fit in with existing discoveries, so it's always possible that this may remain an isolated case for a very long time before further investigations take place. Baba has also, in this epoch-making work, written many other details from the spiritual and metaphysical standpoints. This will be, needless to say, the greatest book of the age, since it's written by one who, in all fullness, knows as well as feels himself to be the one and the many at one and the same time, from the beginningless beginning to the endless end. As the master Maulana Niaz Ahmed says, quote, every time my beloved bears a different name and manifests in a different garb, Yet ever the same face assumes a different form of beauty and grandeur. End quote. One may well read many philosophical accounts, but still remain ignorant. For illumination, it's necessary to realize that creation may be likened to an immense panorama, and that one is in it and yet not in it, inside and yet outside it all. When a few, in the coming awakening and general push in spiritual consciousness, are made perfect and given all knowledge, they will be able to look back in time to the days of Adam, and before that, to when they were strangled up like men, and before that, to when they were amphibious reptiles, and before that, they may be able to see the millions of Christs. Like Guru Nanak, they will sing, quote, "At his throne 1,000,000 prophets, and millions upon millions of Ramas, and millions of wayfarers, each clad in a different garb. He, the Lord of all, is one, the chief of all lords. He is the creator of all that is. He is beyond conception and speech. His qualities are unnumbered and endless." End quote.
Please continue, Gloria, for a couple more minutes.
Chapter 11, Meher Baba. It is not necessary to go into important details concerning the early life of the Master. They have been written elsewhere, also in my previous book, Civilization or Chaos, and some information has been given in Appendix 1. According to Meher Baba, there are always 5 perfect masters or Sadgurus in the world at all times. But in avataric periods, such as now, these masters prepare the way for the avatar's divine manifestation. Of these 5 who are connected with Meher Baba's spiritual unfoldment, the most important were Babajan, Sai Baba, and Upasni Maharaj. Asterisk, his disciple Godavari Mata directs his ashram at Sakori. Her spiritual connection with Meher Baba is close, since the master has started that in a former life, Godavari was his Yashoda Mai when he was Krishna. The latter is well known in India as the spiritual successor of his famous master, Sai Baba. It was at the end of December 1921 that the boy Merwan, Meher Baba, was restored by Upasani Maharaj to his normal consciousness as a God-realized man. At that momentous event, the great Sadguru, in referring to Merwan's future career, declared in the presence of some of his disciples, quote, "I have given my charge to Merwan. He is the holder of my key, and holder of my key," quote close. Sometime later he stated, quote, "This boy will move the world, humanity at large will be benefit at his hands," close quote. A few days later, he sent for his close disciple Gustaji Hansotia, Appendix 9, and said, quote, "I have made Merwan perfect. Hold on to him through thick and thin," close quote. Upasani Maharaj gave expression to his love and reverence when he declared, quote, "An avatar is born in your person, Merwan," close quote.
Thank you, Gloria. Could you continue, please, Miguel?
It was after the final and greatest of all initiations of God realization that Merwan became known as Meher Baba, and to his followers as the avatar of our age. In a superstitious country like India, a man has only to sit under a tree or in a cave, and he will collect a following. But if he is to keep his following, he will have to do something more than that. Meher Baba neither sits under a tree nor in a cave, and people ask, why not? They say, in fact, quote, how can he be a great master if he does not do all the things that masters are expected to do, end quote. And then again, the saints are generally inclined to stay in one place where the devotees can gather and visit them, so that gradually a big center is formed. Meher Baba, since the beginning of his mission, has always lived the life of a more or less normal man in normal circumstances. Only those near him and in touch with him can have any idea of his spiritual status. For this reason, persons who have little knowledge of the ways of the great masters and those whose intuition of the finer things of life has become blunted by the materialism of our age will question and criticize. They will say, quote, how can he be a great saint when he does not follow the mode of life customary to a saint? Why is he moving about continuously? Why is he rarely seen and difficult to approach? Then again, how is it that he lives like an ordinary man? He does not ride on tigers or allow snakes to entwine his body, nor do any of the spectacular wonders that sometimes are expected by the ignorant of men who are believed to have attained to a certain spiritual status. End quote. On the contrary, Baba lived, so far as outside observers can see, quote unquote, like an ordinary man. That is to say, he lives in ordinary dwelling places amongst ordinary people. Also, he has the limitations of an ordinary man. He can suffer pain, be sick, and have accidents. In other words, he keeps within the law. In any case, it is not possible for everyone to judge the masters. They cannot be fitted into categories. From Jew Abdullah, who has had considerable experience of masters in his epoch, in writing of the problems of men and masters in Meher Baba's In the Great Seclusion. And there comes an asterisk, and then this is published by Meher Publications in Ahmednagar, 1950. So Meher Baba in Great Seclusion says, quote, it is indeed difficult for men to appreciate fully all that the great spiritual masters say and do. In fact, granting that there is a definite plan behind all life capable of a distinct fulfillment, many things the master have said and done so far are as much a bundle of contradictions and anomalies as is the history of mankind to date. Man is still engaged today in a life and death struggle between beautiful ideals to be achieved on the one hand and dangerously ugly situations to be avoided on the other. Nevertheless, according to Baba, the realization of God is the one plan that every individual has an equal right to achieve, and everyone does possess equal opportunities to achieve it. End quote. Following these remarks, I suggest that readers should read The Incredibly Sai Baba, and there is an asterisk. This is by Arthur Osborne, published by Orient Longmans in 1957. should read The Incredible Sai Baba, for this little volume gives considerably insight into the strange ways of the great spiritual masters and their extraordinary eccentricities. For when in the ambience of a master who operates in different states of consciousness, in fact, in different worlds, in parents, whereas we ordinary mortals only know one world, it means that devotees cannot but notice the curious and wonderful events that always happen. The author states that it was believed by some close to Sai Baba that he belonged to a hidden spiritual hierarchy. The village schoolmaster who lived in a little mud-walled schoolroom just behind the mosque that the master inhabited reported that he often heard conversations going on at night in strange languages, not only Indian languages, but in English also, of which language Sai Baba knew nothing. Yet physically, the master never left Sridi. Many are the startling facts recorded of this great master. Meher Baba has certainly confirmed the fact that Sai Baba belonged to a hidden hierarchy, for he averts that Sai Baba was the head of the spiritual hierarchy of his time, and therefore had the spiritual direction of the First World War and events to follow. It is only Meher Baba's close circle, those who manage his household and attend to his needs and activities, who get daily opportunities of seeing a divine personality in human form. Baba is that consummate paradox, the human and divine at one and the same time. Being the avatar of this age, his work is with the universe as well as with the world. But what do his intimates see of his working? As has already been said in the preceding chapter, they know little more than those who are not with him. Sometimes they will see Baba walking up and down in deep concentration, his fingers moving strangely in short, brisk movements as though drumming. Beyond the fact he is busy, in quotes, and must on no account be disturbed, they know little else. And as has been suggested, his most important work sometimes appears to be done when he remains quite alone in deep seclusion in some empty house, and very occasionally in a cave, but of course we do not know. No one is allowed to approach him in occasions, and his food, if he is not testing, is just handed in when asked for by his mandali on guard who remains outside. Then there are moments, even amongst his daily activities, when Baba will cover his head and face in a shawl and for a while remain immobile. It is assumed that he has gone, quote unquote, somewhere, and is probably in consultation with members of the unseen hierarchy who function behind the scenes. For such beings possess the consciousness and are not fettered by time and space as we ordinary mortals are. Here indeed, it is to realize on acquaintance that Meher Baba is considered by his followers to be the avatar of this age. But nevertheless, those near him can testify in a multitude of ways to the omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence of their master and the universal scope of his mission. It is impossible to describe my own personal relationship to Baba. Sometimes I think of, quote unquote, the Hound of Heaven, one of the greatest lyrical poems ever written in the English language. From its opening, quote, I fled him down the nights and down the days. I fled him down the arches of the years. I fled him down the labyrinthine ways of my own mind, and in the midst of tears I hid from him and under running laughter. Up bestayed hopes I sped, I shot, precipitated, adown titanic glooms of chance fears from those strong feet that follow after. But with unhurrying chase and unperturbed pace, deliberate speed, majestic instancy, they beat, and a voice beat more instant than the feet. All things betray thee, who betrays me. End quote. Down to the great ending, quote, but just thou mightst seek it in my arms, all which thy child's mistake fancies as lost, I have stored for thee at home. Rise, clasp my hand, and come, halts by me that footfall. Is my gloom, after all, shade of his hand outstretched carelessly? Ah, fondest, blindest, weakest, I am he who thou seekest. Thou cravest love from thee, who craves me? End quote. Francis Thompson. There's a quote. Oh, there is an asterisk. Francis Thompson, 1959 to 1907, poet and writer of prose. Francis Thompson, the author, was a mystic, and his spiritual stature was eventually recognized by his intimates, of whom one wrote, quote, Thompson cared nothing for the world's comment, and though he could talk with radiant interest on many things, it was always with a certain sunny separateness, as though he issued out of unseen chambers of thought, requiring nothing, but able to and willing to interest himself in the things to which his attention was drawn. End quote. With Meher Baba, one is aware all the time that he is immersed in what might be described as thousands of chambers of thought. Those who are the master's intimates cannot but feel that strange remoteness that separates us all from him, though he will be, by his manner, just as human as are we all.
Thanks, Miguel. We'll pick up here at the top of 178 next time.